And as it goes mainstream, people do not particularly care for it as far as the larger audiences. They don't understand it. This isn't real music. And if you contrast that to maybe what people were saying about the American Revolution, oh, this is never going to work because, we hear the founding fathers' beliefs, but there was definitely dissenting voices in it. And so just like in hip hop, which went from this underground thing to the biggest musical genre, this multi-billion-dollar musical genre. It's amazing that if you look at the founding fathers and that shot that it's heard around the world, that America went on to become this huge, most impactful global power that it is today, and probably well beyond anything that the founding fathers could have imagined. So I do think it is appropriate that we begin a with the cabinet battles. All right, and we'll discuss some things in that. So I'll share my screen, and thank you for dropping the Gil Scott video. Let's see. Hopefully you guys can hear this.
Ladies and gentlemen, you could have been anywhere in the world tonight, but you're here with us in New York City. Are you ready for a cabinet meeting? The issue on the table: Secretary Hamilton's plan to assume state debt and establish a national bank. Secretary Jefferson, you have the floor, sir.
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We fought for these ideals, we shouldn't settle for less. These are wise words, enterprising men quote them. Don't act surprised, you guys, cause I wrote them. Ow, but Hamilton forgets. His plan would have the government assume states' debts. Now place your bets as to who that benefits. The very seat of government where Hamilton sits.
Not true.
Oh, if the shoe fits, wear it. If New York's in debt, why should Virginia bear it? Our debts are paid, I'm afraid. Don't tax the South, cause we got it made in the shade. In Virginia, we plant seeds in the ground. We create. You just want to move our money around. This financial plan is an outrageous demand, and it's too many damn pages for any man to understand. Stand with me in the land of the free. Pray to God we never see Hamilton's candidacy. Look, when Britain taxed our tea, we got frisky. Imagine what's gonna happen when you try to tax our whiskey.
Thank you, Secretary Jefferson. Secretary Hamilton, your response.
Thomas, that was a real nice declaration. Welcome to the present. We're running a real nation. Would you like to join us?
Stay mellow, doing whatever the hell it is you do in Monticello.
If we assume the debts the union gets, a new line of credit, a financial diuretic, how do you not get it? If we're aggressive and competitive, the union gets a boost. You'd rather give it a sedative? A civics lesson from a slaver. Hey neighbor, your debts are paid because you don't pay for labor.
We plant seeds in the South.
We create, you keep ranting. We know who's really doing the planting. And another thing, this the age of enlightenment. Don't lecture me about the war. You didn't fight in it. You think I'm frightened of you, man? We almost died in the trench, or you were off getting high with the French. Thomas Jefferson always hesitant with the president. Reticent, there isn't a plan he hasn't jettisoned. Madison, you mad as a Hattison. Take your medicine. Damn, you in worse shape than the national debt is in. Sitting there useless as two shits. Hey, turn around, bend over. I'll show you where my shoe fits.
Excuse me. Madison, Jefferson, take a walk. Hamilton, take a walk. We're going to reconvene after a brief reset.
Okay.
Hamilton, sir, a word.
Hold on. There's a little part right here.
You don't have the votes. You're gonna need congressional approval, and you don't have the votes. Such a blunder. Sometimes it makes me wonder why I even bring the thunder.
Why he even brings the thunder.
Okay. Enough. Enough of that. That has to be, if you will, one of my favorite scenes in Hamilton. I want to pull up the lyrics to the cabinet battle. That's not it. There we go. Okay, cabinet battle number one. Now, in this particular scene, they are actually discussing the mechanisms of running a government. They have won the war. The hard part, I won't say the hard part, um, the first big challenge out of the way, and that's actually establishing a government. But there's a lot of tension about how it should be run. And in it, Thomas Jefferson responds, "We fought for ideals, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We fought for these ideals. We shouldn't settle for less. Those are wise words. Enterprising men quote them. Don't act surprised, you guys, because I wrote them." In what ways, as far as life, liberty, and happiness, and those sort of ideals, when we think about some of the ideology that was set up as far as the Constitution, our American ideals, that we as a nation settle for less?
Because,
That's okay. Can I speak? I don't know if any.
Go for it, and then Naomi, you can just go.
Oh, okay. Don't forget that it was not happiness, but the pursuit of happiness.
The pursuit of it. Very good.
Yeah, that there's a big difference.
I guess,
Now,
unfortunate as it was, the only way we're going to create a nation was to allow the compromises on slavery. Otherwise, we would have been 13 small states. Possibly some of them would have gotten together, or a confederacy would have formed and a union would have formed much earlier. But I think the sad fact is that this was the only way that the United States was going to get formed.
So let's bring it to 2021, if you will. I hear a lot of discussion now after the Capitol attacks and after this attempted insurrection and attempted coup about making amends and healing and what we should do in the namesake of unity. Now, in this time period, the colonists are trying to unify, but they end up marginalizing a group of people as that is occurring for the sake of their own pursuits. Now, what is the expense of unity today? Or who are we trying to unify in terms of unity?
Okay, what happened subsequently was a civil war and was a period called Reconstruction. And that was when we, as a nation, first literally blew it. Because freed slaves were voting, were being active in government, were being active in civic affairs, and were protected in this by the federal government. And then we wound up with a power clash and the so-called Great Compromise, which blew the entire Reconstruction out the window, culminating with Plessy v. Ferguson. And it's that period of time where, had we followed the path of Reconstruction, things would be a hell of a lot different now. But we didn't. So now we are essentially trying to rebuild from the late 19th century, which started probably when first women got the vote, even though Black women did not, or they nominally did, but didn't. Started with the integration of the armed forces, which was Harry Truman's fiat. Started with the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and is still ongoing, because with every leap forward, you get a couple of steps back. And so we're now starting now where we should have been in about 1880.
Now, let me add to this. In this cabinet battle, you have some gigantic personalities that are going at it, okay? You have Thomas Jefferson, you have George Washington, and of course you have Alexander Hamilton. These are major political figures. These are major founding fathers. Are they fighting for the people in this scene? Are they fighting for themselves?
Are politicians ever? There is always a duality. Hey, somebody else say something here.
Well, again, because we are in the middle of a pandemic as well, and there's been a lot of debate on how to get relief to the people, right? To those that have been impacted by it, hurt by it. And at this point, I think it's the entire nation. I don't think there's anyone in this nation that hasn't been impacted by it to some degree. How do you watch the dialogue that you see in Congress and maybe compare it to that scene that we just witnessed?
I don't see a dialogue. I see two monologues.
So people speaking to themselves, for themselves. Someone else?
Georgia, go ahead.
I think we've learned nothing, less than nothing, and it gets worse and worse and worse.
Isn't it amazing that in that length of time, right, there can be such an intense debate? And even now, like in this last election, one of the things were the fighting for the soul of the nation. And even before this particular song that we just witnessed, amazingly enough, I want to say it was Adams was telling Jefferson, oh, we are fighting for the soul of the nation, of how things will be ran. 200 years, right? And we're still having debates about the soul of the nation, but never about the people that make up that soul of the nation. I do want to go back and also show you guys something really interesting, because one of the things that you pointed out was, well, Jim Crow. Okay. Interestingly enough, I like to tell my students that we always had the option. The founding fathers were not ignorant of inequality. They understood the irony of suppressing people, but yet asking the King of England for freedom, or at least demanding that of him. Okay. And I know in our contemporary minds, we often look back like, well, hindsight is 2020. But interestingly enough, even though Alexander Hamilton is the star of this, the man who shot him, Aaron Burr, actually supported the end of slavery. Okay, so here's some things about Aaron Burr that you might not likely know. Burr worked against rules that gave greater weight to the votes of the rich and laws that required people to own property in order to vote. That early in America, we were working to disenfranchise people based on class, based on their economic status, right? He did fight for freedom of the press, but interestingly enough, I want to go to this one right here because I think it ties into some of the ethnic and racial minority themes that we're building on. Burr was a slaveholder, but when the New York State Legislature was considering a bill for gradual abolition in 1785, way before Reconstruction, well before the Civil War, Burr proposed an amendment that called for the immediate emancipation for all people living in slavery. In addition to that, because I think this is really great when we think about the Schuyler sisters and how magnetic and educated they are, Burr was the only member of the Founding Fathers who believed wholeheartedly in the rights of women. He called Mary Wollstonecraft's Vindication of the Rights of Women a work of genius and educated his daughters better than most men at the time. By the age of 10, his daughter could translate Latin and Greek. And Burr wrote, I hope yet by her to convince the world that neither sex appears to believe that women have souls. So we do build a lot in this nation upon this theme of, well, we have to sacrifice people, right? No matter the cost, in order to unify. And that's a debate that we have been having for an extremely long time.
Let me just mute what I'm in here.
We should be able, at some point, to challenge that narrative that we have to unify, but leave some people behind in the process. Any questions or commentary?
Gail or Millicent?
Yeah,
Gail, what do you have to say?
I have to say that in this pandemic, some people, if they felt like they wanted to die for any reason, they could give themselves a chance of getting the COVID-19 by not wearing a mask, going outside on their porch or out in their yard for like 30 minutes without the mask. And there's a chance that they'll die from the COVID-19.
Yeah.
Whether they die or not depends on if God cares about them or if he doesn't really care.
Now, in bringing up the mask, there are some people who find themselves or to compare themselves to liberators by not wearing a mask.
Oh.
What separates that sort of thinking to the sort of revolutionary thinking we're seeing in Hamilton and maybe the themes that you're seeing in the civil rights movement and women's suffrage? What makes this thinking different?
Because they don't feel like wearing, because the masks stink. Maybe they can't stand the COVID-19 of the rules of what we need to do and what we don't. They can't stand it. Mm-hmm. Going on, no friends, can't make a good thing, can't be around people. They can't stand it, and they don't care if they die, so they're not wearing their mask. They go without it, and they don't care if they die from it. So they keep.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is some people are opposing the rules. Some people are indifferent to maybe the sanctity of life in the whole pandemic situation.
Georgia and Gail and then Georgia.
I was just thinking the concept of government. If the idea that government is a bad thing now. I mean, I grew up in an era after, as a child, that I remembered the end of World War II, and we had a reverence for government. Mm-hmm. And there's this group of people that think of government as being a hostile group of people that are destroying our souls. So and that's a real problem, because I don't think there will be unity.
Let me say on top of that, as far as with extremist ideologies, you do see a lot of anti-government themes. Interestingly enough, though, when I had to teach principles of sociology, we oftentimes talk about institutions as if they're things and not people, right? What you don't like about the government, you honestly don't like about the people.
It's true.
It's a giant mirror reflecting back at us in some ways socially, right?
Gail, excuse me, was your name after Crystal Gayle, the white singer?
Yes, I was. Great catch.
Your mother must have loved her a lot, didn't she?
Well, it was actually my older brother, who was 7 at the time, who named me after, who gave me the name Crystal.
That's amazing.
Yes.
Crystal Gayle's hair was very long, but she had never had her hair cut.
Yeah, she had that long brown hair.
Yeah, it was right down here on her back, right to touching her butt.
Yes.
Her butt, right past her butt.
My aunt used to talk to me about that all the time, so you're correct. I was named after Crystal Gayle.
Georgia, go ahead. You had something to say, I think.
When she said that they don't care if they die and they don't wear a mask, the point is it's all about them. They don't care if you die. That's what the problem is.
There's a, right, there's,
No, then they must know that we too feel
They
like
don't
we
care.
can't stand the rules of COVID-19, and we feel bad about COVID-19 too, and it don't make sense to some of us who are wearing masks. So that's why they don't care if we die too.
thanks, Naomi, go ahead.
Me?
The problem is a little bit of both, because fundamentally there are people who believe that the virus is a hoax being perpetrated on the people by the government for reasons that they are not clear about, but that it is not, it's not a disease, it's like the flu. And it's something that the government is forcing us to do because the government wants us to believe that this is dangerous.
Yeah.
Let me add into this thing something else I think is a difference when you hear these, sort of argument in anti-mask and how they, talk about it in terms of liberty. It's a liberty that only benefits themselves. Even if it was exclusionary, because the Constitution is a living document, right? It ended up benefiting an entire nation as far as their liberties and their rights. These, small group of people did something revolutionary, and thousands and then millions benefited from it. When you talk about the suffrage of women, a lot of them were Quakers, a lot of them were religious minorities, a lot of them had been marginalized, right? Even based on sexual orientation. When they fought for suffrage, the entire nation benefited. When you're talking about the civil rights movement, right? And the pushback against Jim Crow, it was fought, right? And led, as far as 1964 Civil Rights Act, by African Americans. But it was the nation that benefited from it, right? We also have to understand when a small group of people are fighting for something, right? When we listen to the minor voices in our communities, there is a benefit and a blessing to the whole of society. Because we rise with whoever is on the lowest stratification in our society, right? It's almost like they're saying, we're as strong as the weakest links. Not that minorities are the weakest links, but we can't be greater than the disenfranchised in our society. So when they improve, we all improve.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that there is an interesting way in which I do think that Jefferson in this rap battle is actually sort of making an argument for the South.
Mm-hmm.
It is certainly self-serving, but it's a representative perspective of the South at that time, right? That by thinking of themselves as planters, right, as people who are growing and paying their debts, right, and not recognizing that they're doing it on the backs of slaves, right? That he's very clearly representing a particular demographic within the South, whereas Hamilton is making an argument for the whole of the Union, right? That you can't separate, if you separate out Virginia from New York, to the extent that Jefferson wants to do, right? You'll end up with an unworkable, system.
I also want to say that there was a lot of aristocracy, right?
A lot of what?
A lot of aristocracy. There was respect, right?
A lot of what?
Aristocracy, meaning focusing on, this is one of the things that Crystal brought in regards to Aaron Burr, right? That Hamilton National Bank, right, is really only concerned with people of great wealth, right? And
right.
Landowners and so on and so forth.
And so I think even in contemporary arguments, now that the South isn't like the strongest in the economy, you could probably listen to that and just flip states, and you would probably hear like the same sort of dialogue where maybe some of the arguments that Jefferson was making about the South paying the debt. Well, Northerners say that now. why would we bear the issues of the South, right?
The way that the more rural states have inordinate amount of power, especially in the Senate,
right?
Because they have so many fewer. I mean, I was listening to something about, I think it was Nevada, and how the Biden administration wants to restrict new gas and oil leases. And this is, or maybe it was Wyoming, and the entire local government system is predicated on the taxes from the extraction of natural resources, so that there's no culture of businesses and individuals paying for government services. It all comes and so, you know, and this sort of environmental thing is seen as an attack on their very way of life, right? Which is it's a mismatch. So
definitely.
But Alaska also depends very heavily on this, and there it was payments to individuals. But going back historically, when George Washington died, he freed his slaves. Thomas Jefferson never did. So there was obviously something going on in terms of one person's feelings and conscience versus a different one.
I have such mixed reaction listening to George's and Thomas's story, because on the one hand, George never acquired any more slaves, and from my understanding, but at the same time, he got his slaves trained by the best people, like chefs and things, so he wouldn't have to pay the best chefs in the world to cook for him, you know? So he was definitely a participant in exploitation.
Oh yeah, yeah. Nobody is.
And even Jefferson, the irony of Jefferson at times kind of making, or addressing the issue or wrestling with it about what to do about slavery. He understood inequality, but at the same time, he was a man who enslaved his own children.
Yes.
It's very easy, I think, on one hand, to sort of be very clear about what the right thing to do would have been. I'm not sure how easy it would have been to do the right thing if we had found ourselves in that situation.
Let me add to that, because I do think that is important to acknowledge, right? Because once you've done the right thing, it's easy to say the right thing is to be done. To think about how powerfully society impacts us and our perceptions of one another and how we treat one another in terms of justice and inequality. The first person to be hung for treason in the United States was John Brown. And they hung John Brown because he was an abolitionist fighting against slavery. That is how ingrained a system of inequality is in the United States, right? They said it was treasonous to fight against a racist system in the US. For him going to plantation, freeing people. Ironically, this happened, of course, before the Civil War, where literally it took bloodshed to end the institution of slavery. But I don't want to lose sight or take for granted that the rabbi is right in saying that it's not an easy task to go up against what we know and the perceptions that we have held our entire life. I would say it takes outside of the box thinking to even challenge that in the first place.
Yeah.
Right? To think this is not the way that this is supposed to be, which I think in Aaron Burr's case really makes it, a phenomenal, because again, this is not a society that allows for that. It's highly stratified based on class, race, gender, religious orientation, right? And if you don't hold to that, you literally are losing your livelihood.
Go ahead, Naomi.
Let me just ask this among this group. Had we in 1934 to 1938 been quiet middle-class Germans with jobs, maybe owning a shop or two, would we have kept our heads down and just sort of said, oh, it'll go away, or isn't that too bad? What would we, assuming a different orientation, have done? I'm very serious about that because it's something I've had to think about a lot over time. Were I a Christian German during that period, what would I have done?
Now, I don't know if anybody in the group wants to take that question.
Tough one.
I just throw it out rhetorically to think about.
Yeah.
Let me go to this song that I want to play real quick, and I'm going to go back to your question, Naomi.
Tell you what I wish I'd known when I was young and dreamed of glory. You have no control.
Now, this is Jefferson talking to Alexander Hamilton.
President Jefferson. I'll give him this. His financial system is a work of genius. I couldn't undo it if I tried. And I tried.
President Madison. He took our country from bankruptcy to prosperity. I hate to admit it, but he doesn't get enough credit for all the credit that he gave us.
Every other founding father's story gets told. Every other founding father gets to grow old.
And when you're gone, who remembers your name? Who keeps your flame? Who tells your story? Who tells your story?
Time on tears. I live another 50 years. It's not enough. I interview every soldier who fought by your side.
She tells our story.
I try to make sense of your thousands of pages of writings. You really do write that you're running out of time. I rely on Angelica. While she's alive, we tell your story. She's buried in Trinity Church near you. When I needed her most, she was right on time. And I'm still not through. I ask myself, what would you do if you had more time? The Lord in his kindness, he gives me what you always wanted. He gives me more time. I raise funds in D.C. for the Washington Monument.
Tells my story.
I speak out against slavery. You could have done so much more if you only had time. And when my time is up, have I done enough? Will they tell our story? Oh, can I show you what love is like? I established the first program in New York City. I helped raise hundreds of children. I get to see them growing up. In their eyes I see you, Alexander. I see you every time. And when my time is up, have I done enough? Will they tell my story? Oh, I can't wait to see you again. It's only a matter of time.
Now, let me say, as a side note, there's a great deal of irony of Alexander Hamilton dying as a founding father because he couldn't keep his mouth shut. It's probably the most American death that you probably could guess for a politician. But a huge theme in Hamilton is the issue of time. Time. What do you do with your time? And to go back to Naomi's question, what would you do if you were in a certain time? I think Hamilton poses a different question. What will you do that with the time that is given? There's this part where George Washington is speaking to Hamilton, and he says, history has its eyes on you. It understands that history is something that is happening now. My response to people, when they imagine themselves in a certain place, or what should have done or could have been done, is what you would have done in that time period is exactly what you are doing now. If you are fighting for equity now, it is my strong hope, of course, and belief that you would have been doing so then if you're addressing the issues now. I think another important thing is that we are always building on the legacy of the past, right? Eliza, who is Alexander Hamilton's wife, looks at his 40-something odd years and see the ways that he writes, and she takes it upon herself to complete, if you will, or continue what she feels to be his legacy and his work, and expand upon those ideas. In the same way, it can be impressed upon us that us as an American should be challenging ourselves in which ways we can expand upon those ideas, which ways are we building the legacy. And again, I think another important line is going back to George Washington. He said, let me tell you what I wish I knew when I was young. You have no control over who lives, who dies, who tells your story. I think a lot of the things that the founding fathers did, if they wouldn't have known in 2021, we would go back and start bad mouthing some of them, maybe they would have given it a second thought. But, we're subjective a lot to our own stories. So we have to do our best as far as leaving a legacy, right? Or telling the story of ourselves, taking control of the narrative of ourselves in the best way that we can, because it's going to be interpreted later on. So you have to be clear about what you are saying right now in this moment.
Go ahead, Georgia.
Keep in mind the saying that I always remember when you're judging history, that the victors write the history books.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're not going to read a lot of books by Nazis about World War II because they lost.
I don't remember studying about Aaron Burr, other than I thought of him as a bad person.
Mm-hmm.
Hamilton. That was stuck in my mind as a kid.
Now, ironically, to say that, because this thing with Alexander Hamilton did ruin his political career. Oh, it absolutely did. He was found not guilty, but you're right? The narrative changed after that. Those things that I read to you about Aaron Burr, about him wanting gender equity, about him trying to enslave the United States as early as the 1700s, right? I left out. And even now in this sort of narrative, he's jealous of Alexander Hamilton.
I didn't hear any of these things about Aaron Burr. This is very upsetting.
He says very upsetting. Yeah. And what is our responsibility in learning about the past? Because you're right. There's so many things that we look back and we're like, wow, I did not know. So what is our responsibility when engaging in past or engaging with things concerning history? Where does that leave us?
like so many people, Burr had his good points, which we aren't talking about, but shooting Hamilton is not his only problem. He had a lot of other issues in which he was involved where he was not necessarily the good guy. So again, it's a duality. The question is, how do you deal with the duality of a historical figure?
Or any figure.
Yeah.
Well, I think for one, we have to learn to stop deifying people. We do. And when I talk about deification in the sociological sense, we do that a lot to people that we admire or the people that we want to vilify. We make them the epitome of good or the epitome of evil. People remember so easily about Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream. They'll quote that, or they'll quote the love quotes, but as far as human aspects, they completely glance over it. Same thing with Malcolm X, right? They'll portray him as violent, even though throughout his civil rights movement, he was never once arrested, right? So we'll create narratives and oversimplifications of people when really we should try to tell a human story, because that is what binds us. That is what connects us. Just like our lives, we live a human story. There are things that are our strengths. There are things that are our weaknesses. We do have to go back to recognizing the humanity of each other currently and the humanity of the people within the past as well.
And I think,
and you always have to consider the source, not just the content, but the source.
But the source, I agree.
And the context in which, in which the person lived. I mean, I think one thing that's, that we get tripped up on a lot as humans, right, is that when we're feeling a little insecure, we tend to fall back on binaries, right?
Mm-hmm.
Good and bad, right? Or racist or not racist, or communist or American, or fascist or American, and I think we forget that we're always growing and we're always changing and always learning. There's always more for us to learn. We can always do better than we're doing now, right? Which means that things are not fixed. And I think that's one of the things we get, this sort of idea that Malcolm X was one thing, or Martin Luther King was one thing, or Alexander Hamilton was one thing, whereas they were actually people who grew and changed over time. Taking that into account, seeing them as humans rather than as comic book heroes is a little bit complicated.
Right.
I'd like to say something about FDR. When I was growing up, he was idolized. And then we found out with time, he was not such an angel.
Talking about Roosevelt or FDR?
Yes.
FDR.
No, FDR.
Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Well, I will say to that.
Teddy suffers the same fate, so
yeah, it doesn't negate the lessons. I feel that we should be learning, and I think that's the important thing. Even with what Eliza does in Hamilton, her husband, by far, as you know, knew, because he literally had this affair and embarrassed her. But he took the lessons of Hamilton. What good can I make of this situation? And built on that.
Well,
she didn't have to copy the negative habits. She didn't have to copy his negative traits. She took the lessons that she felt would benefit her life, but other people's lives, and applied them.
But I wonder, was it Hamilton that inspired her, or was that who she was and her history? And that's why she did the great things that she did.
I'll add that as well. I don't want to give Hamilton too much credit because she was a Schuyler sister. She came from a wealthy family. And I haven't dug into it too much, but that probably means she was educated a little bit more than not.
Yeah.
So again, maybe in that time period, she had the freedom, right, to go beyond Hamilton's political career and finally get some things done that she wanted to address.
Yeah. When you look at the 1820s, 30s, and 40s, there was a lot of social reform activity which was led by women.
Yeah.
And I don't know during what time period she was doing this, but she would have been part of that kind of movement.
Yeah. And let me say, she fits right into kind of the archetype of what you would see in the latter suffragist movement, right? Where the more wealthier white women kind of took the lead on those issues, even in terms of abolitionism, which, let me put in the historical context, makes sense, because if you were a poor woman, you're a enslaved woman, you just don't have the freedom to speak out about those type of issues, right? And so she was in the perfect position to address that.
Yeah. But these people also worked on prison reform, worked on education reform, worked on
some children issues as well.
You know, they did a lot of stuff.
Yeah. So.
Oops. All right, so we are close to time. So I want to give anyone who would like to make a final statement, a final comment or question.
I remember when I went out with one of those plastic things, those things that they cover up to their bands and they come out like this, they're like plastic. I thought that was supposed to be all right to wear alone. Someone said you're supposed to wear the mask with it. The COVID-19 can get inside because that thing comes out wide like vanity. I started wearing it. Someone told me.
Yeah, that thing's really good with a mask, Millicent. You need the mask as well, to be sure.
Yes.
But I don't have it. I stopped wearing it because I knew I had to wear the mask with it. Or I like to wear the mask without it because that way I wouldn't have to get my lipstick on the mask and I could breathe better. And I went and bought. That's why I got it. But I got refunded for it. I don't wear it anymore.
No,
I
you need the mask more than you need the face shield.
You have to wear the mask.
Yeah.
But I heard of the Cool Turtle. The Cool Turtle is this thing, plastic thing, this thing you put under the mask, and it gives you, solves your problem. You won't have to smell the bad smell of the mask, and it'll be easier to breathe, and you won't get all hot and sweaty with it.
Got it.
It's called the Cool Turtle. You want to go to mycoolturtle.com.
Great. Okay. Thank you. So I really want to thank Crystal very much.
Yes.
Joining us again. Really.
Yes. Thank you, Crystal. Thank you.
It's so illuminating to spend time with you, Crystal, and thank you. And thanks to everyone else who joined us today.
I hope you come back.
So
one more thing, it's not MyTwoCurl, it's getcoolturtle.com. www.getcoolturtle.com if you want to get one of those things to solve the problem of the mask.
Great. And next week is President's Day, so I'm going to take off on President's Day. I'm not sure that our new rabbinic intern is going to be able to take over Soul Search next week. We'll see how that goes. So check the schedule. In 3 minutes, we will start our sing along. And Gail, go ahead.
I just really appreciated Crystal. I appreciated your insights, and I would like to suggest, Rabbi, that we could have Crystal come back if she's open to it.
Yes.
For some other discussion.
I'd be thrilled.
I would love that.
That would be great. I'll be in touch with Crystal and figure out some sort of schedule. And because, as you know, Crystal might not know this, but we've had periods at this 1:30 on Monday time where we've had sort of greater concentrations of conversations about Black Lives Matter, depending on what's going on in the outside world. Sometimes more, sometimes a little bit less. But I would be very open to making these type of topics, not necessarily Hamilton, for fear of beating the horse too much, but that other topics in this theme, I think would be really, really illuminating and great to have your voice, Crystal.
Next Women is Women History Month in March. So
great.
I'd just like to
Thanks
make
again.
a comment in terms of having Black people working here at 100 Center Street. There are very few of them. That's not by accident.
Well,
To
they're
bring it close to home.
not
Here.
administrators.
Certainly worth a discussion. Certainly, we definitely do have African Americans on staff, but arguably,
Very few
Are
of the
not
aides
enough.
are African American.
but yeah.
Oh, I hear you, Sandy.
Really,
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Large company. There's a lot to be said about that topic. So,
Yeah.
Rabbi,
yes, Georgia.
can I ask you, I was late getting on because of the way it was listed and it didn't, I don't need to explain, but what did you play by Gail Scott, Heron in the beginning? The Revolution Will Not Be Televised? What song did you play?
Yeah, just Naomi was asking about sort of the history of hip hop, and Crystal suggested that that's a good track to listen to as a sort of a precursor or early exponent of hip hop.
That's also his most famous one.
Most famous,
Most
right.
people are familiar
Yes.
with it.
Right. And it also sort of demonstrates how hip hop emerged not only from funk, but also from
I'm sorry I missed that, but
yeah. Well, you didn't.
I'm glad you played it.
We just talked about it a little bit. So.
Oh, okay.
All right, so I'm going to switch over to the mode of singing music. So I want to thank Crystal again, and we will look forward to catching up with her another time very soon, I hope.
I hope
Yes.
so.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.
right.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone who's not going to stick around for the other thing. Yeah.
Gail, stay
Yeah.
on for a minute. I want to ask you something.
Okay.
Were you here last week when Crystal was here?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Because this is not her first
No.
time. Yeah.
Okay. All right, here we go. We're getting there. We're getting there. All right. There. It's going. It's going. Thank God. It's weird. The days are weird.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
what's the woman's name who was talking about masks? I want to ask her something, but I don't know who
Millicent, she's still on the call, Georgia.
I don't. Oh, so I can't get. Well, do you have her number or anything? I'll
Millicent,
call you another time. I see you're
are
involved.
you willing to let Georgia give you a telephone call?
Me?
Yeah.
Talk to me?
Yeah. Would
Yes.
it okay if Georgia gave you a phone call?
Will I like Georgia to give me a phone call?
Yeah.
Yes, I have a question I want to
There's
ask.
a question for you that
What is it?
Well, we shouldn't talk about it now because we're about to start our, but Georgia can give you a call if you'd like to hear from her.
All right.
Okay, sounds
Okay.
good. Thank you, Millicent.
Well, what's her number?
I'll get it to you. Or Millicent, you can give Georgia your phone number.
617.
Millicent?
Yes, 617
Uh-huh.
879.
879?
Yes,
Uh-huh.
0747.
Give me the last four digits.
0747.
617-879-0747.
0747.
All right.
Okay, I'm gonna call you right now. Are you in this next group?
I'm going to be inside the singing, right after the singing is
Okay,
over.
I'll call you after the singing or later tonight. I have a question to ask you. Okay, thank you so much.
I wish I could. They are on the screen, just only on this screen. I don't have enough chords. I don't have enough chords. Actually, I do have a chord. I could do it. Hold on 1 second, everybody.
Can you do this song in English, please? Because I don't understand the Hebrew.
I can't get out of here.
Can you do this song in English, please? Is it going to be in English?
Believe.
It is in English.
Corner. Georgia,
Yes.
you want to leave?
Yeah, I got it. I see the exit full. I'll get out. Yeah.
All right, everybody. So we're going to sing. We'll start
Thank you.
Israel High. The people of Israel lives. Our Father in heaven lives. Am Yisrael Chai, 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 Am Yisrael. Am Yisrael Chai, oh Rabbeinu, Let's see here. Oh, this is always a good one. All right, I'm gonna lay down my sword and shield. I'm gonna
lay down my sword and shield by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. Gonna lay down my sword and shield,
my sword and shield. Down by the riverside, ain't gonna study war no more. I 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 ain't gonna study war no more. I'm gonna lay down my heavy load down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. I'm gonna lay down my heavy load down by the riverside. They're gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. study, oh, no more. I ain't gonna study, oh, no more. I'm gonna shake hands around the world, down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. I'm gonna lay down around the world, down by the riverside. I'm gonna study, oh, no more. I ain't 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 gonna study, oh, no more. All right, woo, nice singing, everybody. All right, so this is a good one. Okay, so hallelujah. We'll sing a little bit in English and a little bit in Russian. There was a secret door that David placed, and it pleased the Lord. But you don't really care for music, do you? It goes like this: the fourth, the fifth, the minor fall, and the major lift. The baffled king composing, hallelujah. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Спасибо, Бог, за лунный свет, за дивный мир других планет, за каждый миг, который проживу я. За радость душ, за свет и тень, за самый лучший в жизни день, за каждый новый вздох мой, аллилуйя. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Спасибо, Господи, за мной, за каждый новый день земной, за все, что в этом мире я люблю я. За шум листвы, за дождь и свет, безумный молитвы петь, за свет в моем окошке, аллилуйя. Прости, что эти люди злые, что в мире сумрака и живут вопреки с собой воюя. Позволь забыть, простить, любить и жить давно, и просто быть во благо этой жизни. Аллилуйя. let's see here. There we go. I did my best, it wasn't much. I couldn't kill, so I tried. I told the truth, I didn't come to fool ya. And even though it all went wrong, I'll stand before the Lord in song with nothing on my tongue but hallelujah. 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 All right, very nice. Okay, well, all right, so we'll turn to something Russian. This is called Podmoskobnie Vechera, Suburban Moscow Nights. But in Russian, in English, that doesn't sound so good. So we just say Moscow Nights in Russian, in English. And I realize that maybe, может быть, we не видели нашу Marina. Maybe you didn't see our Marina, so I wanted to make sure that she was visible to everybody. Okay, вот. This is Millicent, and I don't know who this is. Who's at 1231?
Oh, that's me, Francis.
Oh, hi, Francis. Okay, great.
Yeah, hi. How you doing?
Good. Nice to see your what's it called? your phone number on the screen.
Yeah, I very rarely do this. I just thought I'd try it out. Sounds very good so far.
Thank you. It's a lot of fun to have you.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm not really sure what's going on here. Let's see here. Okay, there we go. So right now we're gonna go to I want to hold. No, I wanted to sing the other one. Somewhere Over the Rainbow. There we go. Okay. We're out of tune now here, so. Oh, hey, James. What is that? Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Someday, James, someday over the rainbow. Someday. All right. Somewhere over the rainbow, way above, there's a land that I heard of once in the somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue, and the dreams that you dare to dream really do come true. Someday I wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where troubles melt like lemon drops away above the chimney top. That's where you'll find me. Somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly, birds fly over the rainbow wide, and why can't I? If happy little bluebirds fly beyond the rainbow, why, oh, why can't I? Okay. And now let's go to this one now. Okay, we'll play a little bit of rock and roll music. Oh. Oh yeah, I'll tell you something. I think you'll understand when I say that something. I wanna hold your hand. I wanna hold your hand. I wanna hold your hand. Oh, please say to me, you let me be your man. And please say to me, you let me hold your hand. You let me hold your hand. I wanna hold your hand. And when I touch you, I feel happy inside. It's such a feeling that I love. I can't hide, I can't hide, I can't hide. Yeah, yeah, you got that something. I think you'll understand when I say that's something. I wanna hold your hand. I wanna hold your hand. I wanna hold your hand. And when I touch you, I feel happy inside. It's such a feeling that my love I can't hide, I can't hide, I can't hide. Yeah, you got that something. I think you'll understand when I feel that something. I wanna hold your hand. 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 All right. Okay, so let's go back over here to Katyusha, Nasha Lubimaya, our favorite song, Katyusha. Let's see, we'll have ask Marina to take the lead on this one. What is all this stuff? I don't even know. Okay, Hava Nagila. All right, so our last song will be Hava Nagila, one of our favorites. So we start nice and slow and try to get a little faster. We'll see how it goes. Nagila. 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 It's my whole world, it's my whole, Nagila Alba, Nagila Alba,
Nagila Beya.
Nagila Alba,
Nagila Beya.
It was a real sing-along.
When is it over?
Very nice. I hear people singing. That's great. Thank you, Millicent. Thank you, Francis.
Thank you, Rabbi.
So nice to spend time with you, and we'll get together again soon.
Thank you so much. It was very enjoyable.
Goodbye. Goodbye.
Yeah.
Millicent. Thank you.
Okay. See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.